everyone. My name is Julia Ryan. I'm the Artist Resource Manager for the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, and I'm just going to start us off today. And I want to thank Pascal so much for being my partner in these calls these past few months. A little just introduction. We are here on behalf of the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture in the city of Boston. So we are a department in Boston that on the arts from a kind of municipal level. And we have a lot of varying programs that we really welcome you to give us feedback on, to learn about on our website, and to be in touch with us about, ranging from public art to our Poet Laureate program, to our Artist Resource Desk, to so much more. So we, are really excited to have you all here today, and we hope you will continue to come to these calls with us as we kind of, get through COVID-19 and all of our current events that are so challenging us all right now together. So just a quick update. We have, before I get started, we have an incredible list of guest speakers today. We're going to be focusing on kind of some questions and answers for reopening and making art during this time, specifically in relation to COVID-19, and also kind of how to share your art, perhaps on different virtual channels right now, or how best to meet with artists, either in person or through activists for work or in virtual spaces. So today we have guest speakers from HowlRound. We have guest speakers from the Network of Arts Administrators of Color. We have a few guest speakers from the city of Boston. We have a representative from the Small Business Department in our Economic Development Department. We have someone here who will be talking about streets and kind of open public realm use during this time. And then we also have our Director of Public Art here to chat more kind of about what public art and making public art looks like during this time. So just to kick us off, a few updates from the city in relation to COVID-19, and also our updates on the police department and some of the concerns around racism in Boston right now. So as of Friday, and these numbers are just a little bit delayed, they're from Friday, we have over 13,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Boston, and almost 8,000 of those folks have fully recovered, and almost 700 have died, unfortunately. An update on our police overtime and kind of police brutality crisis. The mayor declared on Friday a emergency, declared racism in Boston a public health crisis and emergency. And part of that declaration was an initial investment of $3 million from the police overtime budget to our Public Health Commission. The mayor, in addition to that, has endorsed a 10-point action plan that is in line with the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus and other elected officials of color in Boston. There's also a review right now of the use of force policies outlined by 8 Can't Wait, and the mayor is additionally proposing to reallocate 20% of the police department's overtime budget. So these are all initial steps that we, hope that you all will continue to engage in and learn more about, and really be part of this governing process with us, sharing your voice and your feedback about what you want to see in the city of Boston. Next slide, Pascal.
All right, so we're going to turn it over to Audrey Seraphin from Arts Boston to talk a little bit about NAC and what's happening in terms of their programming. Audrey?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, my name is Audrey. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Membership and Capacity Building Manager at Arts Boston, which is a service nonprofit some of you may know. Arts Boston has traditionally worked with other arts organizations in their service membership model. But in 2016, summer of 2016, we founded the Network for Arts Administrators of Color, fondly known as NAC Boston. If you haven't heard of us, I know I have some members online, so hello. But we are a gathering space, a network, resource share, and a directory of self-identifying people of color who work in arts and arts administration. So arts administrator is kind of a general term. We have a lot of individual artists who are members, and I would encourage you, if you are self-identifying by Indigenous person of color, by Black Indigenous person of color, and if you're bi, you could join on artsboston.org /NAC Boston. We have over 375 members, which is huge and is a really strong showing of how people of color really support and build the arts and cultural community of Greater Boston. What we've been doing both at Arts Boston and with the network during COVID, Arts Boston, as you may know, has a really awesome event calendar, and so we've developed an entire section that is virtual and online sort of events. And as of, I think this afternoon or tomorrow morning, we'll be launching our first ticketed event through our Bostix program, which typically does discounted tickets, but is working predominantly with artists of color, but with anyone who has events and is looking for a ticketing host site. We're selling those tickets for folks, since we know a lot of people, especially folks who typically do free events or work with venues as producers, are kind of in a new space where they're doing more of that administrative management than before. Specifically with the network, every Tuesday evening from 5 to 7, we have been hosting virtual socials. These are based off of socials that were the creation point of the network, where we would, back in the days when we could go meet up at bars and get snacks and drinks and talk about what it means to be, a person of color in the arts, meet other folks who are like us. This was sort of designed to kind of limit the amount of isolation folks felt working, in a predominantly white industry. Now we find it is a place of gathering and limits the amount of isolation we feel in our individual homes throughout quarantine and social distancing procedures. So we actually have one today. It's Tuesday, 5 to 7. I will throw the RSVP link in the chat in a second when I have it copied properly. And yeah, it's fantastic. We have a guest host opportunity as well. We have social scheduled through June, and if there's interest, we're considering extending through July, given that a lot of our colleagues are still inside, even as the state starts to reopen. So as you can see on the slide there, there's information about that. It's a stipended opportunity. You're basically a virtual party host. And it's, people have really been enjoying it. We've done all kinds of different things. From last week, we were making carnival masks. We've had haiku writing. We've had, party games, all kinds of different activities. You do have to bring your own drinks and snacks this time if you're interested in that. But it's been really awesome to kind of engage with both old friends and new faces from all over the country, but predominantly from the Greater Boston area. So please do consider joining us for those. We're running them through June 30th right now. And if you are looking for a one-night gig, please let us know. We would love to have you facilitate. These is an opportunity limited. These spaces are limited to self-identifying people of color. But if that is you and you are looking for a community, please join us. Yeah, I think that's everything we're working on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Audrey. Unfortunately, Audrey won't be able to stay with us for the entire meeting, but I do have her email and I'll throw it into the chat, and Audrey, you can as well. And if you have any questions about the hosting gig or anything else related to NAC, please email Audrey. She is a great resource. Thanks so much, Audrey. All right, we're going to move it over to HowlRound to talk a little bit about creating theater as well as art in the virtual world and what it means to engage at this time.
Great, thank you, Pascal. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Galoon. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director and the co-founder of HowlRound Theater Commons. A little bit about us for those who don't know. We are a free and open platform for theater makers worldwide. We amplify progressive and disruptive ideas about theater, and we facilitate connection between diverse practitioners. We function as a commons, which is a social structure that invites open participation around shared values. We envision a theater field where resources and power are shared equitably in all directions, contributing to a more just and sustainable world. So what does this mean practically? It means that all of our content, which is essays, video live streams, and podcasts, come from the theater community who chooses to participate. And our core values really create our curatorial frame and our content agenda. So our core values are generosity and abundance, community and collaboration, diverse aesthetics, and the evolution of forms of theater practice, particularly relevant to right now, equity, inclusivity, and accessibility for marginalized forms of theater practice, and theater communities, and global citizenship. So our core programs, which are primarily online, though not exclusively, are an online journal, HowlRound TV, which is a live streaming network, in-person convenings, currently digital, and the National Playwright Residency Program, which is a program that we run with the Andrew Mellon Foundation. Today, we're going to focus in on how artists and institutions are making use of HowlRound TV specifically during the pandemic to stay connected. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Ramona.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So hi, everybody. My name is Ramona. I'm the producer of HowlRound, and I use she, her pronouns. So I'm going to talk a little bit about two examples of how HowlRound TV is being used these days, one from an institutional perspective and one from an independent artist perspective. One thing to keep in mind as I talk here is that HowlRound as a platform is field-facing, not audience-facing. So our primary audience is not necessarily people who go to the theater, but people who make theater. Not that those two things are mutually exclusive. We know that a lot of us who make theater go to the theater, but we're really sort of focused on knowledge sharing within the community of theater makers. So the first example that I want to lift up today is from the Martin E. Segal Center in New York City. They are part of CUNY, the City University of New York program, and all their programming is with and for national and international artists, scholars, and arts professionals. So once COVID started and they had to shut down any sort of in-person gatherings or programming, they began this program that they're calling Segal Talks, where the artistic director every Monday through Friday at noon will get on Zoom for a conversation with one or more theater artists from around the world to kind of talk about what those artists are seeing in their community and what's sort of happening in their region of the world. This is a really great way for the institution to stay connected with their community, which again is other theater makers internationally. And it's a great way for them to share information about what's happening in theater communities all around the world. And in terms of which values of HowlRound this event fits, this is a perfect piece of our international focus and our value of global citizenship, as well as our value of diverse aesthetics, since many of these folks are making work that isn't, what we most commonly see perhaps on stages in the US. Another thing that is really exciting that has been happening on HowlRound TV since this pandemic is a total amazing growth of playwrights specifically wanting to share their knowledge with other people in the field. So we've seen a huge explosion of digital playwriting classes from some real amazing leaders in the field. So Susan Laurie Parks, who is an amazing playwright who's in residence at the Public Theater in New York. For years, she had been doing a program called Watch Me Work from the lobby of the Public Theater. When the pandemic started, she changed it over to Watch Me Work from Home, where it's basically just an open Zoom call where she writes, other people sign on and they write, and then there's Q&As where they talk about their work. Another example is Lauren Gunderson, who is consistently one of the most produced playwrights in the US. She's been doing a weekly, if not more frequently, playwriting class where she has guests come and talk about different aspects of their craft, as well as her own career and her own work. And finally, there's been an exciting series called the Latinx Super Friends Playwriting Hour, which is a group of Latinx playwrights who have taken turns week to week leading a playwriting class. So we love this because this is an example of knowledge sharing just in kind of its purest form. These classes are totally free for anyone to join. Nobody's getting paid for this. This is just a gift that these artists are giving to the field. And that's aligned in a really exciting way with our core values of generosity and abundance, community and collaboration, and accessibility. There are links in this slide, but they're not accessible to you guys. So I'll put all these links in the chat. And in the meantime, I will toss it over to my colleague Vijay, who can talk a little bit more about sort of the technical side of live streaming, the tools we use, and give some more information for how you can do things like this either with HowlRound or on your own.
Yeah, so since, hi everyone, I'm Vijay, my pronouns are he, him. And yeah, so since mid-March, there's a huge shift, of course, in the way that organizations and then some individual artists have been live streaming with us, of course, since everyone is needing to be in physical isolation. So we've been tracking that and tracking kind of the platforms, the technological platforms, also helping people figure it out. For the most part, what people are doing is using Zoom Pro and then live streaming that out. And then when they work with us, they're live streaming it to a live stream account or platform that we have. And so audiences are just clicking play on a video player that they find on the homepage of HowlRound or on an announcement post that HowlRound has published. If you're doing this by yourself, it's also quite easy to connect Zoom Pro to, for example, your Facebook page to be able to live stream either a conversation that you're having, or in the case of most independent artists, it's doing a performance. And we have several examples on HowlRound of performances done where the performers are in their own video window using a video conference like Zoom. And so that's the majority of the way people are doing it. The other way is using a free and open source software called OBS Studio, which stands for Open Broadcaster Software, OBS Studio. And what that allows you to do is connect to a live streaming platform like Facebook or YouTube. And you can do a variety of things and mix in different video and audio sources to make a final show. And so, for example, people who have already pre-recorded video, they can live stream that by putting it into OBS Studio and then sending it to their Facebook page, for example. Or they can bring in a live video conference that's happening and then mix that in and cut to a pre-recorded video and then cut back to the video conference in the case of, for example, a Q&A that's happening in the context of broadcasting a show that may have been pre-recorded. And so we're kind of collecting and also offering these educational resources on HowlRound. Here's our first one. I'll put it in the chat, which is how to produce a live streamed event. And this is a very basic kind of how-to guide using Zoom. And then there's another video conference platform called Jitsi Meet, which is a free and open source, completely free video conferencing software that's able to connect to YouTube for live streaming. And so, yeah, if you want to get more information, one good place is to sign up for our email newsletter, and you can find the place to do that on the homepage or on any page of HowlRound at the bottom right corner. And we'll, of course, we're publishing essays as well as these live streams, and then these continuing educational guides to how to actually produce things yourself. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vijay, Jamie, and Ramona from HowlRound. They'll be on the call when we move to our Q&A. So we're going to move over to some public art, and Karen Goodfellow from the City of Boston Office of Mayor's Arts and Culture Office is going to talk to us a little bit about what it means to create public art now during the time of COVID.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Pascal, and thank you, Julia, for having me. And it's nice to see all your faces and read your bios. It's nice to sort of be in community with a different group of arts folks today. So I am the Director of Public Art in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. And so during this time, as all of you have, we've been sort of revamping our processes, and we've done that in a couple ways. We, with the public, we run the Boston Art Commission, which is the body that has care and custody of the City of Boston's art collection. So if an artwork is going to go on city property, we have a public meeting and conversation, and the commission votes on it. Those public meetings are noticed through the clerk's office. So we've had special state permission to move those online. So we've been doing those on Zoom, and it's been actually pretty great. It's made us sort of get our ducks in a row a little sooner in order to get our agendas posted publicly with links to all the materials that people need. And I think has actually made us refocus on accessibility in a way that we had not prioritized sufficiently previously. And so we're having those meetings publicly. So if any of you might be interested in learning about the projects we're working on and reviewing and hadn't previously made it to City Hall, those projects can be found on our website, and you can find links to them the week before our meetings, which are on the second Tuesday of every month. So with that, we are also continuing to commission new works of permanent and temporary art. The permanent projects are funded through our Percent for Art program. And obviously we've been on hold in a lot of ways in terms of fabrication and installation, but we've continued to put the calls out, work our way pretty slowly through artist selection and design, but we are continuing to move forward with those things. And we also recently sort of changed up one of our calls to artists, which last year we had started to do murals, and we focused it on public art that was really prioritizing people and the connections in the community, and have on our website as well, if you're interested in seeing the transformative public art projects, which about, I think, 24 artists ended up getting, working on projects that are a lot of them virtual. So really stretching our idea of what public art can be right now. But what I'm here to talk very briefly about is what it actually looks like to be going out in public space as an artist and working on projects. And so here, if we can get to the next slide, we had looked at the sort of standard inspectional services department construction site best practices and looked at that checklist and gone through and made 2 versions of the guidelines that we are looking for final policy approval on right now. So we have what this one that you see is for artist teams, where it's more than 1 artist working on a project. And we also have one for solo artists that is a little bit simpler than this one as well. But basically, we went through those guidelines and just tried to adapt them for artists that we are commissioning to do projects. We have a couple murals that are actually supposed to be starting this week, one with Rob Gibbs, Pro-Black at Madison Park, and one with Victor Quinones, Market 27 at 95 Magazine Street in Newmarket. So we have those, as well as a number of paint box projects. Paint box is the program where artists are going out and painting utility boxes that we know the artists won't, at least in working, have a lot of people with them. And we thought these are projects that can go forward at this time. There are also other projects that we've approved for the Boston Common and things, temporary installations that we sharing these recommendations with. If you can go to the next slide. So one thing I want to talk about in that when we've been doing this work, just want to make note that our biggest concern, since we aren't expecting artists to be working in big groups, we really wanted to think about their safety and your safety if you're an artist who's going to be going out doing work. And so this is a sign that we're creating, and we're trying to think through new ways to get the word out. Our concern is largely for artists who are painting, that passersby might stop and crowd the artist and might create a spectacle, and it'll be really hard for them to get people to keep their distance, since they might be, attractive and interesting to them. And so we have this sign that we'll be sharing and hoping to have the artist be able to sort of keep people away, but also really looking to have, the mayor help promote these ideas as well about, people are out there working not to crowd around them. And the other concern that we had was that if someone sees someone painting a mural or painting on a utility box, that, if there's a passerby who is racist or who has concerns, like, will they call the police? Will they confront them? Could there be other other problems as well that could come out of that for someone not understanding someone out in public space? And so we are looking for ways to do a better job at considering artist safety in that way as well. So for now, what we've done is put that link down at the bottom, and we're going to try to list out projects that are happening and sort of redirect people's interests, and work at sharing the projects when they're going forward with 311 and local police departments, so that the district captains know the projects are happening. So those are the sorts of things that we are thinking about at this time in the public art program, both how to move things online, how to keep things going sort of in the design phase and keep artists employed, to redefine what our idea of what public art is, and then also when we are supporting artists and going out into public doing work, how to do so safely and to do a good bit of listening to what they need.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen, for all that info. And if you could leave your email in the chat, just in case anyone has questions, that'd be super helpful. And Karen, I believe, will be here until the end. So if you all have questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat as we continue. We'll have about 10-15 minutes at the end to answer all the questions. All right. And now we're going to move on to Reopening Massachusetts Phase 2 with Natalia from our Small Businesses Department. Natalia, are you on?
I am.
All right, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. So I wanted to just share with this group a little bit of information about reopening kind of in general. I just want to note that this is the guidance from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So the city of Boston has been doing a lot to try to interpret this and make it easy to digest for our small businesses here in the city. But just know that if you have specific questions about why the guidance or like how it was decided, just know that this is coming from the state, and the city can advocate for these questions, but we don't always have them. So just wanted to give that little bit of a caveat. Next slide. So just high level overview, these are the 4 phases of reopening. Currently we are in phase 2. There is a second step in phase 2 for close physical contact personal care businesses. And what this basically means is that the businesses that are being allowed to reopen as it pertains to the risk of infection. And so obviously, the closer in proximity that you are to your customers or your clients, the higher risk your business is. And so the later in reopening. I know for this particular group, there's been a lot of questions about performances and really thinking about how artists are being impacted by the reopening phase. And we know it's very, very clear how deeply impacted the arts and culture and entertainment industries are. And so we're doing everything that we can to support you all. So just so you know, phase 2 started about 2 weeks ago, and each phase is going to be phased out approximately 2 weeks. The state is using health indicators and data to determine when folks will, when the next phase will reopen. So this is not about dates. This is really about data, and it has been a really important component of the work that we've been doing. Next slide. So these are 4 things that every single business or entity should be thinking about when we think about reopening. Every industry will have specific guidance that will be relevant to your particular industry, but these are the 4 that are going to go across the board to every single one, from social distancing, making sure that you are 6 feet apart as often as you can be. So for example, personal care businesses, it's impossible for someone to cut your hair from 6 feet apart. So, you know, this is where this gets a little bit tricky, but really making sure that you are using face coverings and masks and proper PPE as it pertains to your industry. Hygiene protocols, reminding folks to wash their hands, to be sure that you are wiping down surfaces, and avoiding any type of escalated risk. Staffing and operations, As employers, there is a responsibility to make sure that you know that one, that if your staff is not feeling well, that there is some policy in place so that folks don't feel obligated to come into work and, you know, put their jobs at risk if they are not feeling well, and making sure that, you know, anybody with symptoms is not reporting to work. And then obviously just continuously cleaning and disinfecting and making sure that the spaces where you are gathering are continuously cleaned. Next slide. So every business will need to conduct these kind of safety protocol checklists. They are on the state website, and you can download them, and you're required to post kind of these checklists to ensure that you in fact are following your industry guidelines. This works for both your businesses, as well as, this works for you as an individual, as well as you as a employer to your customers and employer to your employees, so that they know that you're taking this piece seriously. Next slide. So currently, again, we're in phase 2. Step 1 started on June 8th, and step 2 is to be determined. Step 1 included restaurants being able to sit outside, as well as close personal care. So things like haircuts and barbershops, as well as step 2, close contact will be like nail salons, spas, massage therapy, tattoo, etc. And just one, you can go to the next slide, but I do want to just indicate, you know, if you have specific questions about reopening, please visit mass.gov/reopening. Everything that you can imagine is on there. They have also done a pretty good job of translating. Not everything is in every language, but there are translated documents available with this guidance. If you go to the next slide, and one more, on our page, so there are 2 pages that the city is working on. One is boston.gov/reopening, which is a great resource. We are going to be doing some city-specific guidance that will be featured on that page. But if you are a small business or just need resources, feel free to go to boston.gov/small-business. We're also going to be hosting webinars on specific industries for reopening. We have 3 coming up this week, including for restaurants, how to apply for outdoor seating, for restaurants, how to open safely, and for nail salons, which is tomorrow, about, you know, all the safety regulations. One quick thing that I do want to mention is that just because you're allowed to open by the state does not mean you have to. The city of Boston is committed to making sure that if you are opening, it's because you are ready. You, as a business owner, you are prepared, you feel confident. This is really a trust building exercise between your customers as well as your employees. And we need to make sure that we as a city are really doing everything that we can to protect you know, our businesses, our employees, and our customers. Next slide. To do this, and we know that most businesses have been closed during COVID, but to do this, we are offering grants up to $2,000 for small businesses who need help with reopening, and that can cover PPE. It can help you cover barriers and you know, anything that you need to space out your chairs or your seating, or even your inventory, as well as if you are a restaurant and looking for support on expanding outdoors, there is, you can apply for this grant. If you're interested in this, you have to meet a couple of requirements, which include that you have to have a brick and mortar in Boston. So you have to be a commercial business in the city of Boston. You have to have that commercial space. You have to have less than 15 employees. So we're really targeting the smallest of our businesses. And you have to provide a budget for how you'll spend this money. In order to do all of this, you also need to become a vendor with the City of Boston and get that vendor ID prior to applying. It will just help expedite the process. Information on this page or on this fund is available at boston.gov/reopen-fund. For the folks on this call, I want to indicate that if you are a social enterprise, nonprofit, so if you are a nonprofit that still creates a something to sell or something similar to, like Haley House is a great example. Daily Table is another great example. If you are in one of the early phases of reopening and need support, we are accepting applications for nonprofits that are social enterprises. And obviously it's really up to you how you define yourself as a social enterprise. Next slide. Obviously, buying for any business to open, you need to have personal protective equipment for yourself as well as your employees. So if you are needing support or needing help navigating PPE, we have built another page on our website to both indicate, have a resource for helping businesses identify local PPE suppliers, as well as a way for businesses that have shifted into creating and selling PPE for them to be listed on our website. So you can actually filter this page in whatever way based on, whether these are masks, like handmade fabric masks, all the way up to, higher grade medical PPE. Next slide. And today we launched a list of Black and Brown owned businesses in order to help amplify folks who are Black or Brown in Boston and their different business types. So this does include restaurants, but it also includes arts and culture businesses, as well as, contractors, personal care, personal services, professional services. So feel free to check out this page. You can both list yourselves and or use it as a resource to find and support our Black and Brown businesses. Next slide. And then just so everybody knows, we host office hours every Friday for small businesses. And so between 9 and 11 or 2 and 4 p.m., you can hop on either of these calls and get your questions answered. So I know a lot of artists are sole proprietors or, are consultants and serving lots of different capacities as far as earning a living off of your art. So we want to make sure that you are included in this in all of the work that the city is doing around small businesses, and make sure that that we are here to support you in whatever way we can. Next slide. And if anyone has any questions or looking for any of these resources, you can find them at boston.gov/small-business. Just click on the COVID-19 update, and that'll take you to a list of resources. You can also just search on the search in the search bar at boston.gov for lots of different resources. If you want, you can also email me. I'll put my email in the chat, or you can just email smallbiz@boston.gov. Thank you so much for having me. I didn't see Julia, but Julia, and then obviously Pascal and Cara, and thank you for your incredible work that you're all doing. Happy to take any questions.
Awesome. All right, so we have about 18 minutes until we have to close out. So Julia, can you man the Q&A? See what people are saying in the chat.
How do I
Yeah.
get to the Q&A?
So I'm just gonna be going through the chat to just pick up on people's questions and see if any of them are ones we can answer now. And if they're not ones we can answer now, we will take them with us and focus on trying to answer them after this and follow up with everyone. So let's see, I saw a question from Eva about limitations of Zoom for live performances. And I think that this was a question for Vijay, if Vijay is still here. And just to reiterate the question, it was, I'm hearing that there are limitations to Zoom for folks doing live performances, especially when audio and or video quality is of paramount importance. Curious about innovations you're seeing in the field, especially anything that addresses lag time for remote synchronous rehearsal or performance, for example.
Yeah, so for that first part of that question, people are able to enhance not only Zoom, but any video conference by attaching an external camera to their video conference. So instead of relying, for example, on the built-in webcam in your laptop, you can buy a little video capture device. They range in price from $30 to several $100s, but even like a $30 one is possible. They're also selling out now, or they're not available because of supply chain disruptions, and because these are made all around the world, made in China. But that can definitely take a high quality camera, either video camera or a still DSLR, and turn it into a webcam. And then in terms of audio, it's the same idea where you can attach more complicated audio recording or mics to your laptop or to your computer, and have your Zoom conference or your video conference pick up that sound instead of the small little built-in microphone in your laptop or computer. So that's the first part of the question. The second part, in terms of latency or delay between working with your collaborators, if you're in the same video conference, then the delay is basically non-existent, kind of like what's happening right now. The delay definitely does happen though when you're live streaming. So I'm not too sure what your situation is, but I'd recommend just having people in the same platform and not try to juggle two platforms at the same time.
All right, thank you so much, Vijay. The next question I saw, I believe, was from Kristen, and it was about concerns around the Greenway open market opening this weekend. And I can't really speak for the Greenway. They aren't a city-led agency. They're a nonprofit organization, but I have to assume that they are following the state guidelines that they are mandated to follow at this time with reopening.
Julia, do you, so just a quick note. So yeah, all of the all outdoor markets have been approved to open. Obviously, there are guidance and regulations around opening, around the flow of traffic, around how many tables, how many people can be at the tables. So there are a lot of limitations to reopening, but that started with phase 2. So it started on June 8th.
Great, thank you, Natalia. I'm kind of going through these questions backwards because I'm sort of starting at the bottom, so I apologize for that. But I see a question from Sandra about opportunities for artists in creating and changing artwork for the city in regards to the Black Lives Matter movement and changing artwork in the city that displays white supremacy. And I think that's a really great question. I'm not sure if Karen is still on the line, but I know that the city is having some conversations around city public art and its histories and kind of community conversations around it right now. So let's see, Karen, are you still here?
I am here.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
sorry, I was just looking for the question, but I see it now. What opportunities do artists have in creating? So as Julia said, I sort of mentioned at the beginning of my portion that we've been doing our public meetings virtually. So the Art Commission meeting that we had last Tuesday, we revisited a report we commissioned in 2018, which was at a time when we were looking to learn from cities who were taking down racist monuments that were, identified as Confederate generally, but there were a lot of others as well, Columbus's and stuff like that. So we had done a report on that, and then also identified a bunch of, or 6 pieces in particular of most concern in our own collection. So we reviewed that at our meeting Tuesday afternoon, and actually it was that night, the following morning, that Columbus was beheaded and shortly removed. And we have been talking about, we had talked that day at our official meeting on the Tuesday of having our next public art meeting really to revisit the subject and talk about having a bigger community conversation on the topic again, since that's where public interest is. And so we are looking right now to schedule a couple. So we had initially envisioned a more broad one, but I think we're going to have a series of them, not just one, but we're going to have probably something on our website where people can answer questions, participate in that way, but then also have a public meeting where people can give testimony, probably in particular around Emancipation Group, and then another series on Columbus. It doesn't seem like we can have just one big conversation at this point, but there certainly are other works in the collection that deserve conversation and public comment as well. We're working out the details of the days of those meetings, but we will be advertising them and trying to get them out. I'm sure, Julia, you have a listserv that you'll be sharing those with, and we can try to reach you, because it would be really wonderful to have you there and to have the artist community participate. We'd love as much broad participation as possible. And we will, as I said, also have some sort of series of questions online so people can, if they're not that comfortable giving public testimony, share their thoughts in that way.
Thank you so much,
and then,
Karen. There was one other question for you.
There was just in creating artwork is something different. So I just want to say, like, at those meetings, I think we're going to want to hear from people. There's there's a conversation about, do we remove and relocate? But I think that's one question, but there's also the question of, like, but so what do we do? Do we create new permanent works? Do we create new temporary works? What else is happening? And I would love if that were also part of that conversation. We are still commissioning works, but if we're going to do something more direct in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, then I think that would be something we'd love to also hear from you in those meetings.
And then Karen, quickly, we just had a question from, I believe, Lori, about if you need to live in Boston or not to participate in public art in Boston. And well, I think I know the answer to that question. I thought I would let you weigh in.
No, you don't. So I think if you're asking as an artist, we don't have that requirement. I will say many of our artists are residents of Boston, but we don't have that requirement on the calls that we put out.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let's see, I saw a question about teaching artists and having opportunities to kind of learn about teaching, specifically visual arts, in a virtual platform. And I'm really happy you asked that question, Nancy. So I've been convening regularly with organizations in Boston who support teaching artists, and also teaching artists themselves, and organizations that hire teaching artists, et cetera. So we have a network that has kind of started to take shape called the Boston Area Network of Teaching Artists. We're going to be creating a Facebook group that is run by our office, but that anyone can post opportunities to learn together or network, convene, or go to kind of teaching artist related events. And we have been discussing hosting some more workshops to support teaching artists in this time of just kind of figuring out how to continue doing your work. I know that the Guild for Community Arts Education has hosted some really great workshops and kind of toolkits. And so they've been a really great resource during this time. And I know that we are also kind of trying to figure out amongst ourselves, you know, who should be leading what workshops. So I know that the Open Door, which used to be called VSA, and the Elliott School and the Community Music Center of Boston have all been kind of thinking about how to hold workshops together. And so I would encourage you, if you're not in our newsletter already or following us on Facebook, to join us there. We will post any updates that we hear there about that. And then also stay tuned for that Facebook group where we will make just make that kind of space open for anyone to share resources during this time and otherwise. I also saw a question from Alex about technology grants to support artists kind of going forward, and also to buy various, you know, pieces of technology you might need now that everything is so virtual. And one thing that is worth noting is it is June 16th, and our fiscal budget will be turning over July 1st. We will be reopening the Opportunity Fund then, which is a grant from our department that is pretty open-ended for artists to use, either for you know, hosting events, virtual events they could be, or for buying kind of things they need to support their career. And we are planning to continue making that grant available in a very flexible way for various purchases that artists may need to support their career. Let's see, I see a question from Erin about concern around pit orchestras not being able to distance properly, concerns about musicians distancing and audiences properly, going ahead with seasons not being financially worth it. Okay, maybe I'm not hearing a question there, more of a concern, but yeah, thank you for sharing that concern, Erin. And I'm happy to share that back with our network of arts service organizations, some of whom are on the phone right now, as a concern that kind of, you know, musicians are facing in the area.
I will say, Julia, just in terms of that, a lot of theater companies are trying to figure out what our new normal is. And with the uncertainty of a vaccine, it does seem like we will not be coming into a normal performance style for at least maybe until January 2021, just because of making sure audiences and artists are safe to perform and be together in a space that they can gather that's not outside. And even with the outside performances, we're still trying to figure out how that looks like, since we are still in the 10-person limited area of the phases. So there are a lot of the arts organizations, they are trying to figure this out. No one really has answers to when we can come back to rehearse together at this moment, just because of safety concerns. And without a vaccine, we are putting artists and audiences at risk, especially in certain buildings that may not have the proper HVAC systems that can continue to move the air around, so that if anyone is infected, that the buildings are healthy. So we unfortunately are in this really limbo place right now. So we really don't know when we'll be able to fully come back. So we are working on it. So we are going to continue to update you all as we know more about that.
Cool.
And I think something I'm just generally hearing from folks in the chat is that, you know, people would really love to have more time and to talk about these questions more, and also more specifically by artistic discipline. And that is something that we are, you know, more than happy to do. We have been hosting these calls every other week, but it does seem like there's a ton of, you know, interest here. And so that's something that we're happy to have a follow-up closer than 2 weeks, maybe next week or something, if people would be interested in just having more space to talk about this for a longer amount of time. If you all just would bear with me, I'm just kind of going through our questions to see if there are any last ones we can answer in our last few minutes. I'm seeing another question about virtual performance opportunities and grants for musicians from Marcus. And Marcus, I'm not sure if you were here for when Audrey was speaking earlier, but I know that Arts Boston and the Network of Arts Administrators of Color has been doing a really good job kind of convening virtual events. And I think that that's a really good resource right now. And then in terms of grants, like I mentioned before, the Opportunity Fund will be reopening in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Just so everyone knows, I saw a question about the slideshow. I will be sending the slideshow as well as the link to register for the next meeting in that email, so please bear with me. You'll probably get it, if not an hour from this meeting or tomorrow morning. We send them out every time after the meeting, so just wait probably either the next day, just because normally we end at 5. So just look out for that email in your inbox in the morning, and you'll have the slideshow as well as a link to our website that has information for our next meeting, as well as the recordings from our previous meetings as well.
And another question I saw that I think we could just talk about for a moment is what about outdoor performances if audiences can be socially distanced, from Kelly. And I will say that you know, there are a lot of ways in which we could share our work before that we still are able to. So one way is you are welcome if you want to, you know, play a, for example, like an acoustic set, like something really low maintenance in a park that has not that many people watching who are well distanced. So that is something you can still do. And, you know, I welcome people to continue doing at this time. I think let's see, we're just about out of time, but I do want to say, you know, thank you so much for everyone in joining us today. We had way more participants today than we have, I think, at any session, and I'm, you know, really, really excited to see folks coming here and asking questions and just giving us some really good feedback. And these are things that obviously, you know, we're excited to keep looking into and to keep meeting and keep creating a space where kind of artists can come together and advocate for the things that they need. It's really important to me, and it's really important, I think, to all of us in our department. So as Pascal mentioned, we will be following up with the PowerPoint. We also will be going through and saving this chat and going through just the questions to see which other ones that we can answer at this time. And then in terms of follow-up conversations, I think we can let you know when our next call will be when we follow up with the PowerPoint. So if you all would just hang tight for a little while, we can give you an update about that shortly. And I hope that you can join us next time.
Thank you all so much, and we'll see you hopefully next week. Have a great Tuesday.